We need to make clothing valuable again. Clothing has lost all value. It's seen as being cheaper than a coffee from Starbucks. So until we get past that, until everyone redefines their relationship with fashion and starts to believe that clothing has value again, we won't be able to solve the waste at this stage.
The waste that we've got, the level of waste that we've got is just too much. If we introduced all of those systems tomorrow, their maximum capacity wouldn't get anywhere near the amount of waste that the fashion industry is producing right now. And that's the elephant in the room. There is no such thing as circular economic fast fashion at the same level that we sell at and produce at right now. It's got to degrow. So it's got to degrow equitably, and it's got to have the systems in place to allow for a circular economy within that, or a closed loop production system within that. At the moment, all the mechanisms that are defined as sustainable in the fashion industry are merely life cycle extension, and we need to build in those circular economic systems.
We have what we call extended producer responsibility. So right from the manufacturer, I think there should be some percentage of cost that should be slapped on the product, so that wherever the final destination of that product should be, the government should be able to track and then get these monies released for the disposal of such items. Whenever the used clothing degrades to a certain minimum standard, they shouldn't export them to us. They should take care of them with their high level of infrastructure that they have. And then we can maintain the market all right, but with some standards, so that at least at the end of the day, it will relieve us of the landfill, because there's no more land.
The whole model needs a rethink, and it's not just dealing with fast fashion, it's dealing with the supply and demand. And ultimately underneath it all, I think as this generation and the next generations come up, we have to deal with the levels of why we are consuming this much.
So that supply chains don't stop at the point of sale for the fashion industry as they do now, but they continue through the entire life cycle of the product back to recycling and manufacturing. And that really involves extended producer responsibility. We need to connect fashion retailers with both ends of their supply chain. So right back to that cotton field, but we also need to connect them with how the waste collectors, recyclers, and those systems, so that fashion's own waste becomes the feedstock for its future production. And that feedstock, that waste, has got to become 90% of its future production. We've got to completely flip the system from a 90% virgin feedstock that's going to collapse before long to a 90% future production, of 90% waste to resource system for its future production. And for me, that is absolutely critical. So degrowth and a waste to resource system.
The first and foremost, we need extended producer responsibility policies for textiles that include ecological reparations for communities here in the global south that have carried the burden of fashion's linear oversupplied economy for decades. We need to ensure that there are avenues for organizations like ours, the OR Foundation, and communities like Contamanto here in Accra to access funding from EPR policies. Because if the clothing that is being collected is going to continue to be exported to communities like Contamanto as a form of quote-unquote waste management, then the money that is being collected to manage that waste needs to travel with the clothing to ensure that the clothing that ends up here in Ghana can actually be sustainably recirculated, and so that communities here can catalyze their own local circular textiles economies. Second, we need to regulate what we mean by recycling. The secondhand clothing trade is not recycling. We need to educate consumers to understand the nuances of this global trade in textiles, and we need to be very careful about oversimplifying this message, because part of the problem is that brands want to leapfrog all other aspects of the circular economy and go straight to recycling, fiber to fiber recycling, which is not the most sustainable thing that we can do.
So what can we do? Maybe there is a future in recycling. Maybe if you're interested in working with us, if you're interested in investing in our country, maybe you can develop recycling plants here. Maybe we can educate people about textile and fiber. Maybe we can leapfrog this entire process of production and actually create something very circular here. Because we've learned from the global north that their systems are not working. We don't want the same systems to be imported to our country. The truth is, we're already doing the work. We are already recycling. We are already upcycling. But people are not making steady incomes from the kind of work they're doing. So why don't we borrow? Why don't we enrich them? Why don't we learn from them? Why don't we create better jobs using the skills they already have in a more industrial manner? We need policymakers. We need politicians. We need laws. Designers can no longer act in silo. Clothing producers can no longer do this on their own. The first thing the Global North can do is to start listening to the voices of those who are marginalized and affected most in the Global South.